I think Tampa will take both games in Tampa to start the series, and then Montreal will win 2 games in Montreal. But then Tampa will win the next one, and then Montreal will win the last 2. I think Montreal will do the same thing the Bruins did. They'll lose all their games on the road until the last one, the one that matters, happens, and they'll take home the cup. What are your predictions?
Suns have the best backcourt duo.
Yeah, so we've already talked about Burrow a lot, especially how he's influenced the Bengals organization to do some questionable things.
A great job from the Islanders to rebound off that and force a Game 7 with Bellavide's game-winning goal in overtime in Game 6.
We don't talk about the 2010s because the 2010s had the Astros, and if the Astros didn't happen, the Yankees would have won in 2017 over the Dodgers.
I'm going to say it's during the Week 17 game after the Cowboys have clinched the division, so we just put Bendinucci in.
Vegas was really outplayed the last 3 games of this series, and they did not seem like they wanted it as much as Montreal did.
And then the Oilers versus the Jets. Jets haven't been playing well. Oilers, you got a great offense with Connor McDavid. So I have them sweeping them.
Yeah, well, I don't think you heard my point. The San Francisco Giants have 3 more in the 2010s than the Rangers have in their entire history. So, yeah.
It's hard to get back and to get back-to-back wins. And I don't see the Lightning doing it here, so I have them losing to the Hurricanes in 6.
DeAndre Ayton, I think, will step up in this series and shut down Jokic enough for this to work out for them.
He was close to Frank Reich, and they want Frank Reich back, so that's what they got. It's their discount Frank Reich in Eagles' eyes.
Kaprizov and the rest of this crew, Jordan Greenway, who doesn't get enough props, he definitely is somebody who needs to be mentioned more.
What would you have said if I bet you $100 at the end of the round robin and start of the playoffs that the Stars would be in the Stanley Cup playoffs? Or Stanley Cup Finals.
Hi, this is Julie Dobbs. You're listening to Outsiders Opinions with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our USFL Opinions of the Week. We're going to be talking about the parity issue in the USFL. We both agree there is a parity issue. I think it's kind of a normal state of like getting better teams. If that makes sense, like I think you're bound to have a parity issue, and it's so apparent in the USFL because it's only 8 teams. And Austin, I'll let you talk about the parity issue. But I just wanted to say I think it's normal. I'm just curious how the USFL uses how it corrects. Like, will it self-correct, or will the USFL have to do something? What do you think?
Yeah, so there's basically 3 tiers right now in the USFL. There's the elite, and that includes the 8-0 Birmingham Stallions and the 7-1 New Jersey Generals. Then there's the good, the 5-3 Philadelphia Stars, the 5-3 New Orleans Breakers, and the 4-4 Tampa Bay Bandits. And there's the bad, the Gamblers, who are 1-7 Houston, the Pittsburgh Maulers, who are 1-7, and Michigan Panthers, who are 1-7. There's a clear and distinct area where you see, oh, these teams are insane. These teams are good to mid, and the others are absolutely terrible. And it's a glaring issue that for all of those teams that are 1-7, they're on a huge losing streak. The Maulers have lost their last 3. The Michigan Panthers have lost their last 5. And the Gamblers have lost their last 7. The Gamblers won their first game and have now are 1-7. So it's a glaring issue that the parity there is not where you would want it to be. You'd want at least 2 more teams close within 2 games of the second place team, but it's not really the case. And those 3 middle teams aren't really all that close to the teams at the top. Like the Breakers are still 3 games back of the Birmingham Stallions. The Generals are 2 games back, or the Generals are 2 games up on the Stars, but the point differential is major, and the Generals again have not lost a game since week 1. So it just looks like in each side there's one team pushing for the title. There's 3 teams in total pushing for the playoffs, and the other teams are pushing for that number one uh, pick.
Yeah, so there is an issue. Like you said, there are 3 different tiers, and you can tell. Um, you can tell. Um, I agree with you there. You and I were disagreeing before. I think it's a normal thing. It's just so apparent because it's only 8 teams. Like I think if this was on a bigger scale, like I kind of compare it to the NFL you have a couple bad teams, but you also have some middle teams and then you have some great teams. It's just there are 32 teams, so you don't really see the disparity that there is. Um, that's kind of my thing. So what is your argument with this parity?
I just think that it's glaring. It's popping off the page, and like you said, that's true. The NFL does have a lot more teams, so it doesn't seem like there is a parity issue, and there's a good range. But there is still the case to be made in some leagues that there is a major parity issue. We can see that like in the NBA. When you go to the NBA playoffs, the higher seed won every round these playoffs. In the first round. The first round, the higher seed won every round. So that could be seen as, well, should there have been that many teams that made the playoffs? Should there have been the plan? And is it really worth it? But here it's so much more glaring because the 8-0 and 7-1, those teams combined have played 16 games and lost one. So you really have to question whether or not it is something that is sustainable, because when you watch the game, you're going to be like, if they're not in the same tier, it's not going to be a good game necessarily. And while there have been some close games between teams in different tiers, it's always followed the same trajectory as, oh, well, they're not in the same tier, so the other team's going to win because they're in a higher tier.
Yeah, I would agree. So yeah, it is glaring, and it's definitely you mentioned sustainable. It's definitely not sustainable. I think there's going to be in the off season. I could see the Maulers parting ways with the coach or manager or GM, and same with like some other teams because the Stallions did something right, and maybe you see some teams try to steal coaches from the Stallions, or make trades. So I think there should be less bad teams next year. I think more teams will be in the middle. Um, that's my view of it. But I think after next season, if there's a problem like this, then the USFL will need to make a change because then you can't keep it up because then you have that same situation like, oh, they're going to beat the 1-7 team. There's no glaring upset. So that's my view of it. It's not sustainable. It's sustainable for now because you're just starting, you're getting players. Um, Teams now know what they want, maybe, or they know what not to do. And some teams know what to do. So I think it's just a normal progression of a very young league with its young teams. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. And it makes sense why there is a parity issue this early into the existence or the new existence of the USFL. It just seems like watching games, as I've watched a good bit, I've tried to watch at least one game per week. I didn't watch one this past week because I was out of town, but I have noticed that most of the games I've watched have been entertaining. It just seems like at the very end, the team that's supposed to win does, and it's kind of disheartening when there are no upsets. Upsets are what makes sports sports. When you go back to 2018, no, 2019, when the Patriots last week of the season were about to try to get a bye, but then the Ryan Fitzpatrick Dolphins beat them. Like that's a game that you could watch and really enjoy if you're not a fan of the Patriots and or the Dolphins, uh, because or just want to see the upset. You just want to see the team that's not supposed to win, and that's fun for a lot of sports fans who have no dog in the fight. And I think the USFL really lacks that right now. So if your team's not winning, you can't just watch an underdog win because the underdogs aren't doing so.
Yeah, I agree. Everyone wants an underdog. We like that story. That's what makes so many great sports movies. The Mighty Ducks, incredible movie because they were the underdogs. So I know not football. I'm trying to think. I haven't really watched football. Remember the Titans? Is that underdog story?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would think so.
And then Coach Carter, underdog story. But that's everyone loves underdogs, so I totally see
Miracle
why
on Ice.
Miracle on Ice, yes, real life example.
It's a true
of
story, but it's
upset.
also a movie, so it counts.
Well, yeah, and yeah, it's a true story, but we always want the underdog. So we'll have to see what happens, and like some upsets still happen in college football, even though there is a disparity between the great teams and the lower teams. But sometimes A&M beats Alabama for some reason. So, but then you get to the playoffs. So, and then you add Georgia beat Alabama, but that's just a rare occurrence. So we'll have to see what happens. But I think they're on a good track right now. We'll just have to see what moves are made for the teams that are just playing terrible right now and do not have a good record, and what happens to the teams that are playing well. Because you want, hopefully, you get teams playing better instead of the better teams playing worse. So we'll have to see how it adjusts. Anything else?
Nope.
All right, that is it. Thank you for listening to our USFL Opinions of the Week, and be on the lookout for more Opinions of the Week from Outsiders Opinions.